Right, folks, what we're offering you here, and I hope that I'm going to be able to make lots of connections between what John and Joe were just talking us through, but also to pick up on a lot of the themes that when Mike, Louise, and I were just reviewing the program to date, we were trying to sort of say, what were some of the key things that, appeared important to you as a group by way of being a strategic leader in children's services, but also some of the messages that we were hearing from the various people who have joined us during the course of the program so far. And as John was just saying, there's no procedural route map for being a DCS. He spoke about the importance of emotional intelligence and also about, being clear about your leadership styles and when you maybe need to adjust things for different kind of situations. Joe and John spoke a lot about leadership approaches which require persuasion, influencing. What Sukriti just said in terms of, which was the thing that I picked up that Joe spoke about, which was at what points is it important to be strategic and tactical? The other things were about visible and invisible, maybe at times, and also the importance of engagement. So I hope that what we're going to be presenting to you is we'll pick up and we'll give you some frameworks and some concepts which help you to make some sense, more sense of your own kind of leadership styles and approaches, both in terms of your current day-to-day work and then thinking forward to maybe when you're in a DCS role. I'm going to do this at a reasonable pace. You'll be getting all these slides. It could be that they've already landed in your inbox, but you're going to be getting these slides in the next few minutes. And once I've just kind of gone through some of the models, approaches, concepts, etc., you're then going to get a period of time for you to spend in smaller groups just to do some thinking through and maybe some application of some of these models and approaches to the thinking and the conversations that you've just been having with John and Joe around workforce. Okay. So I think all of these things, at different points have been given emphasis to within the program generally. This whole thing about a DCS is that, no one can be expert in everything. It's about doing the doing that you kind of build up a body of kind of expertise. But the DCS role is very much not about being expert in social care or education or whatever it may be. It's about being expert as a strategic leader and all that's entailed in that. The thing about belief in self, I think John underlined that point a few minutes ago. And it's the thing about being able to cope with the uncertainty. And what might be some of the tools that will help you with some of that. So these are what I'm just going to be walking and talking us through. The final one there, adaptive leadership, is going to be picking up on the whole kind of dance floor to the balcony. We're going to show you a video which is saying the same thing, but it's from the swamp, which is in effect the dance floor, and the balcony is the higher ground. Some of you may have seen the video before, but we hope that will be helpful to you. So if we just start with this whole thing about being a resourceful and intelligent leader. So that's about getting the best out of you, but also the most of those around you. And this is using the language about being autopilot and conscious leader. So I'll just let you for those that maybe haven't seen this before. Just to draw the distinction between those two things. Because I know that there's a lot of what we do, just because of the demands on time and everything else, that we just go into autopilot, isn't it? We come into work and we're off. You just have to hit the ground running. And so there is something you have to just rely in terms of your leadership styles and approaches on just being a bit intuitive about it, I suppose. So there is something where you're just being automatic and unconsciously responding to the various situations that you're having to deal with in any working minute of any working hour and all that kind of stuff. Now, you know, what we would say, and I'm sure what all of you know, both in your current roles, but also thinking about the role of a DCS, is that the more you can make the activity in terms of the things that you end up engaging in much more of a conscious process, because in some ways that's the hard work of being a strategic leader, is that you have to constantly base yourself in the moment. Because again, I'm sure for many of us, there will be times where you just zone out in meetings or in, I don't know, in various other things that you kind of get involved in, where you feel there's a possibility for you to just kind of zone out. Now, I think what we all understand is that as a DCS, because everything is kind of focused on that role and the responsibilities you hold as a DCS, there's something about trying to, you know, make sure that whatever you're involved in, that you're kind of doing, that you understand, you know, what it is that's before you and what might be the best ways of kind of responding to that. So being a conscious strategic leader, it's about understanding your beliefs and assumptions and how they determine how others see the world, but also how they're affecting, you know, decisions maybe you're making or decisions that others are making as well. And that you're seeking to understand others' mindsets. And this bit kind of fits in with what John was saying about persuading and influencing. You can see what you could do to transform what limits others' perceptions and actions and outcomes. This model concept, which I don't know whether any of you have come across in other times, you know, in terms of other program leadership management programs that you've done, uses the language about being a diminisher and a multiplier. Now, I think we would all say none of us come into public services and none of us would feel that being a diminisher fits well or often within the culture of public services. Now, the kind of diminishing leadership style behaviors you can see down the left-hand side there, the kind of empire builder, the tyrant, the know-it-all, the decision maker, the micromanager. So somebody really who leaves can often, you know, kind of take oxygen out of a room and doesn't leave space around themselves as a strategic leader for others feeling and knowing how they can best kind of contribute to things. So what we would all aim to be, and I'm sure, you know, all of you will be, is about being a multiplier. And these are just some of the kind of features, facets, characteristics of being a multiplier as a strategic leader. So the talent magnet. So that kind of links into a bit about the workforce, that, you know, people would want to come and work, you know, for you, for the, you know, for this children's services department, etc. The liberator, the challenger, and the debate maker. Now, all of this is laid out graphically. So what you can now see on screen is saying the same stuff, but just laying it out in a much more visual way. And the people who kind of created this sort of thinking around being a diminisher and a multiplier, you know, what they argue is that if you operate as a diminisher, then what they get is less than half of people's capabilities. So you're really not utilizing the people around you. And that, you know, as a DCS, as we know, well, and in many of your current roles, would be also the wider system around you as well. Whereas the argument is, under this model, is that if you're operating much more as a multiplier, in that you're trying to get the best out of people, then you are more likely to get twice the capability, because people feel engaged, empowered, and everything else, can see where their role sits and fits with, you know, improving, maintaining high quality children's services. Now, the model goes on to talk about working on the basis that none of us would want to be, would ever want to see ourselves being labeled as a diminisher, is that sometimes, and this is often because of, circumstances and the pressures within the systems, that we can unwittingly find ourselves being accidental diminishers. And I've just pulled out 3 examples where you're a visionary, you're great at kind of seeing the, what it is that you want to achieve, where you want to take your teams, your service, the directorate, etc., the partnership arrangements, whatever. So you lay out a compelling vision of the future and you evangelize to your team. You think you're being a good leader, but you haven't left enough space for employees to think through the challenges for themselves. Something about, you've kind of gone from A to whatever, Z, but you're not necessarily, you're not kind of taking, by giving the opportunity for discussion, debate, and everything else, so that you're kind of taking people with you and you're allowing people the space around you to talk through their worries, their anxieties, maybe around the vision. The next one is about the gift of the gab. Now we are, you need some of that to do your current roles and to be an effective DCS. It is about showing that kind of passion and that you're articulate about, who you are and what you want to achieve. But you consume a lot of space in a meeting and you think your passion is infectious, where in reality, it can be a bit stifling. And then the final one there is that you're great at this kind of ideas generation because of the kind of creative nature of who you are and everything else. But in reality, that you're causing organizational whiplash as people scurry to keep up with each new idea. Okay, I'm going to move us on through. So that's accidental diminishers. This next area is around being a resourceful and emotional intelligent leadership. So you've got here, something around the core behaviors of being a resourceful leader. I'm sure, some of you may have seen this list before. The openness to possibilities, collaboration, the personal resilience, and being tenacious about being able to create and sustain commitment, ability to simplify, and the ability to learn continuously. And then linking into that of emotional intelligence and leadership. And while we use the term around emotional intelligence a lot these days, thankfully, just recognizing that you need the kind of intellectual cognitive abilities to be a DCS, but which is all the head stuff, but you need the heart stuff as well. You need to understand you and then understand at an emotional level those around you. So just in terms of defining emotional intelligence and its links to leadership. So it's the ability to understand and manage both your own emotions and those of the people around you. And then let's just say, so people with a high degree of emotional intelligence usually know what they're feeling, what this means, and how, what the impact of those emotions, can and are likely to be having on those around you. Okay. Linked to all of that is this whole model thought concept, really, around compassionate leadership. I mean, this is gaining more recognition, not unsurprisingly, really, given the world that we have been living in and currently live in, which is about never lose the kind of human component of the jobs that we do. I mean, that I would say that that this can apply to any work situation, not just in public services, but across all industries and everything else. So for those of you, maybe, some of you might have heard Michael West talk about this at conferences. 1 or 2 people have already referenced it, I think, during the course of the program. So down the left-hand side, what Michael West says, there are these 4 key components around compassionate leadership. That's about attending, understanding, empathizing, and helping. So attending takes us back to the kind of conscious leadership stuff, which is where you are in the moment with your group of staff, or whatever situation that you're in. People have this sense that you are there with them. You're not, thinking about this and think. People can see that you really are, kind of connected into why any particular group of people have come together. The second bit is about understanding that as a kind of strategic leader, that by maybe some of the questions that you ask, that you either say, you need some help to better understand what the issues are and all of that kind of stuff, or that you're acknowledging by reflecting back to people that you understand what are these particular areas that people are wanting more help and support with. Next, so that's about not just intellectually getting it, but emotionally getting it as well, and how the kind of behaviors that you can show around that in terms of empathizing. And then you're trying to work out, how can I best help in this kind of situation? Now, often it's as a DCS, as we've heard many times, it's not that you necessarily need to get directly involved in something, but people can see that you will help by facilitating, the broader kind of strategic position that has got a relationship to whatever it is that people are wanting your help and support with. And then built across all of that is something about how does that then get translated into effective leadership? So about direction, alignment, commitment. Next part is about inclusive leadership. It's about purpose, vision, positively valuing difference, and so it goes on. The next part is about how can we do this together, so collective leadership. And then the fourth element is around the systems. How can we get the wider system where it's relevant to work better and in the interests of children, young people and their families? Okay, now the next couple of slides are about saying, within public services, but certainly in children's services, we work in these really complex, sophisticated in many ways, bureaucracies. And certainly my experience when I was working frontline in local authorities and stuff in children's services is, the danger is for all of us, I would suggest, that we can become bureaucrats and technocrats in terms of the jobs that we do. The next couple of slides that we're showing you is, and these will often come from other communities, other societies, which is just to remind ourselves about what is it that we're really here to do in terms of children's services in this country, which is all about improving the quality of lives, to meet needs, to address risk, but ultimately to improve the quality of lives for children, young people and their families and their communities. So you've got here Ubuntu, which is an African philosophy, which again is about human kindness. It's about thinking, what can you, just going back to some of the basics of looking after children, generally within a local, so the 80,000 children in Coventry, what kind of leadership needs to be given to building and sustaining the kind of community networks to say that everybody in our society has a responsibility to children and about safeguarding children and all the rest of it. Our legislation actually points us in that direction. So it's the whole thing about it takes a village to raise a child. And then you've got this quote here from Mandela. So it's the kind of interconnectedness of the communities that you'll all be working within in different sorts of ways. And Catherine this afternoon, who's going to be talking about the 21st century public servant, will be picking up areas around this kind of thinking around humankind. How can we create communities that are better around, kind of looking after and keeping an eye on each other and supporting each other. And then here you've got, there's another one, sacred activism from South Asia, which is about, what potentially could you do as a DCS to encourage more people to engage in a kind of voluntary capacity, where that's actually recognized as being something good for communities. So where people are encouraged to engage in community service and seen as a transformation practice. And it's not about personal recognition or publicity, it's because these are good things they're often good for individuals, but ultimately they're good for communities and society generally. Okay. This, folks, I'm going to show you a short video which uses the language from the swamp to the high ground, but is very much, addressing the kind of same thing around the dance floor to the balcony. It's about 5 minutes. Enjoy.
From the swamp to the high ground, leadership in troubled times. There can be no doubt that we're living in turbulent and troubled times. Constant change is not only affecting us on a personal level, but also having a profound effect in the workplace. What this means is that exercising leadership is more of a challenge than it has ever been. It can be hard to orientate yourself when familiar landmarks are disappearing or being replaced, and even harder to work out which way you should be going. Huge amounts of data might be available to influence decisions, but it doesn't always help, and the 24/7 social media overload can sometimes shift the ground under your feet before you even know where you are. It's hard to keep up. Competition and economic pressures are making everyone move faster, with organizations and priorities changing shape rapidly. As renowned academic and author Bob Johansen says, if you are not confused about what's going on, it's because you aren't paying attention. To describe the messy reality of the situation leaders are now in, Christopher Paparoni uses the metaphor of the current world of work being like a swamp, like a bubbling, muddy mess. So, what's it like in the swamp? Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Christopher Paparoni refers to it as VUCA. In the swamp, nothing stays still. It's a volatile environment in which it's hard to find any firm ground for making decisions. In the swamp, the way forwards is uncertain. There are no obvious ways out, at least none that you feel 100% confident about. In the swamp, the work landscape is complex. It's not that easy to identify problems, let alone solve them. In the swamp, you'll get a lot of advice, but you can end up with more questions than answers, and the feeling that it is all a bit ambiguous. In the swamp, leaders must learn to be skilled at dealing with situations that are volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. VUCA. In the swamp, maps don't help. You need to develop new skills. Start by doing something, just to get yourself moving. Experiment. If you stand still, there's a real risk you will sink. Think strategically. Be agile. Stride confidently into the swamp. You may have to backtrack sometimes. Don't be a slave to the corporate strategy if it plainly isn't working. Trust your moral compass and develop strategic agility. What a number of commentators like Bob Johansen and Christopher Paparoni are saying is that to meet the new challenges of this messy, swampy reality, you need to be flexible and have an adaptable and nimble mindset. Find ways of doing things differently and coping with uncertainty. Listen to all voices and reflect, research, and test your ideas in action. You should also be careful about falling into the trap of thinking that you are the fount of all wisdom. Be open to new ideas and seek out new and possibly unexpected ideas. There might be people you don't agree with, or like. They may well understand how to navigate the swamp better than you, particularly if that is where they live. The truth is that the swamp is messy. It's too complicated for one person to navigate well, entirely on their own. So how are you going to do that when nothing you have ever done before seems to work anymore? Improve your ability to understand how we know what we know and look for the high ground. Reset the risk button. Be brave. What has worked so well previously may not now. Be willing to change tack. In messy situations, the direct route isn't always right, wise, or possible. And stay fit. According to the experts, that's the best chance you have of getting to the high ground. But however good it feels once you have arrived, all you can afford is a brief round of applause before setting out on the next volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous journey. The answer is to make sure that you use vision, understanding, clarity, and agility to navigate the new swampy world of work.
Okay. I'm not going to go through this slide other than to refer you to it. So what you've just seen is largely people would capture that as around the whole area of adaptive leadership. So it is about decide at what points is it appropriate maybe for you to be down in the swamp, but clearly as a DCS you need to be up on the balcony, up on the higher ground as much as possible so that you are able to give the clarity and everything else that you've just heard. Okay. What we're going to do is just move you into breakout groups, and let me just get a track of time here. And I'm going to suggest in the breakout groups for 10 minutes. So until 11:05-ish. And then when you feel ready to take a 15-minute coffee break, because I'm sure you're ready for it. And then for everybody to then come back together again at 11:20. So that's 10 minutes in the group. You're going to be in relatively small groups, which Bethany's just been sorting out for us. So hopefully that would just give you enough of a time just to reflect on some of what you've just seen and maybe reflect on the how that links into the session with Joe and John as well. But yeah, make sure you leave yourself enough time for a coffee break with everybody back together at 11:20.